Board of Zoning Appeals of Tippecanoe County meeting. First item on the agenda is the roll call.
Steve Clevenger,
Present.
Gary Schroeder, Tim Vanderplatz,
Present.
Robert Novak, Brad Halberg,
Present.
Ed Butz,
Present.
Rabita Karnikar,
Present.
quorum present.
Thank you. And I would like to welcome Brad Halberg to the Area Board of Zoning Appeals as your first meeting, so welcome. And next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes from the February 28th, 2024 ABZA public hearing as submitted.
I second.
Any comments or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved as submitted. New business.
BZA 2146, 3504 Morehouse has requested a continuance to the April 24th, 2024 public hearing. All other cases are set to be heard this evening.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and take the public hearing motion, please.
And given Tim's voice, I'm going to read this on his behalf. I move that there be incorporated into the public hearing portion of each application to be heard this evening and to become part of the evidence at such hearing, the Unified Zoning Ordinance, the Unified Subdivision Ordinance, the Comprehensive Plan, the bylaws of the Area Board of Zoning Appeals, the application, and all documents filed therewith, the staff report and recommendation on the applications to be heard this evening, and responses from the Checkpoint Agency. And Tim, I believe that's your motion. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That motion carries. And Tim, are you going to continue with motions, or would you?
I can do this. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you're okay with it. I would like to briefly describe our procedures for the meeting. Each case will be heard following a motion and a second from the board. We'll ask the staff to report on its findings. Following the staff report, we'll ask the petitioner to present his or her case, after which anyone wishing to support the petitioner's request for variance or special exception will be asked to come forward. After hearing from the petitioners and those speaking on his or her behalf, we will ask those speaking against the petition to present their arguments. The petitioner will then be allowed to rebut arguments raised by those in opposition to his or her petition. Following the rebuttal, the board may wish to ask questions of the petitioner, supporters, and opponents of the petition or of the staff. The staff will have the opportunity at this time to make any necessary clarifying comments. We will then vote by use of a prescribed ballot. 4 votes are necessary to make any decision. The absence of 4 votes, either for or against the petition, is automatically continued to the next meeting. There are only 5 of us here tonight, so we almost need a unanimous ballot to do that. We can have 1 vote on the other side. Please observe the following guidelines for the sake of time and fairness to all. State your name and address for the record before you speak. After you speak, if you are speaking in opposition or in favor, we ask that you sign in at the staff table after you speak. Limit your remarks to 5 minutes or less. Do not repeat arguments that have been brought up by others. Remember that all visual aids used to support your arguments will remain the property of the board. Cell phones must be turned off while the meeting is in session. Please step out of the room before using your cell phone. And I'll take the continuance, please.
I move that. Thank you.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. If you're here for BZA 2146, that's 3504 Morehouse, that will be held or heard at our next meeting on April 24th. And we'll go ahead and I'll take our first case, please.
I move to hear and vote on BZA dash. What's that? Microphone.
Yeah, turn on your,
Yeah, it is on.
no, it's not.
There we go.
There you go.
You got
Oh, man, all right.
When, if it's
Yeah.
red, then it's on.
I would think green means go, I'm sorry. My bad. I move to hear and vote on BZA-2126 Clinton M. Cordy. Petitioner and owner, represented by Laura Cordy, is requesting a special exemption to allow a transient guest housing operate 24 hours, 7 days per week, for a maximum 8 guests in an R1 zone. The property is located at 906 Princess Drive, West Lafayette, in Wabash 07, Southwest 23-4, with conditions and commitments continued from the January 2024 ABZA hearing by petitioner.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Thank you. David Hiddle with the Area Plan Commission. This is a special exception request from the petitioner, who is also the owner of the property. As was noted, this is the property commonly addressed 906 Princess Drive. It is about a block north of Lindbergh and a block west of Salisbury in a R1 zoned neighborhood. It is in fact zoned R1 itself. Home built in 1965, 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, surrounded by like structures, like homes, except for across the street, there's a relatively unusual 1-story multifamily structure, actually 3 structures that together house maybe 11 or 12 units, probably grandfathered, but it is in fact zoned R1 itself. Otherwise, it's surrounded by single-family dwellings. That is the site plan that was submitted with the property. It's just a depiction of what is currently there. There are no plans to add or remove anything physically with regards to the site. And then that is a photograph of the house from the road from Princess Drive. So this is a special exception request to allow for a transient guest house of the 3 different types of transient guest accommodations. As I think most of you know, a transient guest house allows for rental to transient guests without the property owner being present. The other lesser intense transient guest accommodations impose different constraints with the transient guest room. That is a situation where the guests are renting simply a room and the owner occupant is staying in the property with a transient guest rental. That's a scenario where the whole house can be rented, but for a very limited number of nights per year. This is the version, transient guest house, where the entire house can be rented without constraints that are imposed by the other 2 types of transient guest accommodations. So that is the request before you tonight. The property owner and the petitioner has volunteered certain operational constraints, which we can let them talk about as they come up. Staff has recommended certain commitments and conditions, among them that the dwelling be reserved only by a single booking. So in other words, you can't have one person or party making one booking representing a group, and then another person or party or parties making another booking and then using the house concurrently. So only one booking at any given time. Occupancy shall be limited to 8 guests, and then per the definition of family in the zoning ordinance, there may be no more than 3 unrelated guests at any given time. So staff's recommendation is derived from the statutory findings that we are obligated to use in our analysis. Those are laid out in the staff report on page 12 and 13, but in summary, they meet these tests, this request does, and that is that there are no development standards that would be unmet, meaning there are no variances that are requested or required of this use. The grant of the special exception would not subvert the purposes of the ordinance in staff's estimation, and there are no concerns relative to outdoor lighting, noise, or hours of operation. With that, staff is supportive of this request and would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Petitioner or his or her representative.
Laura Cordy, 4821 Old State Road 25 North, Lafayette.
Clinton Cordy, same address, 4821 Old State Road 25 North.
As David mentioned, we're wanting to use this as what the county calls a transient guest house. We purchased a place in Lafayette to be closer to my husband's family. His father passed away. His mom is older. It's easier for us to be closer to her to help. We wanted to maintain the property. My older son is a college student. We don't want to get rid of the property in case he wants to move there, especially if he stays at Purdue for vet school after he finishes his undergrad. We also have a fair number of out-of-town family that have special needs kids that do not do well in hotel-type settings. And in between the use of family, if my son chooses to live there during college, we would like to focus on doing shorter-term rentals to visiting professors, locum healthcare workers, given that I work for IU Health. We have a ton of locum providers that, again, don't necessarily want to live in a hotel for 2 or 3 months. And we would like to have the option of the transient guest house if there's, 4 to 6 weeks in between those little bit longer rentals that we wouldn't need the exemption for, to have the ability to rent it out for parents who have college kids here that are coming for a parents' weekend or a game to see their kids. We're well aware of a lot of the concerns, property devaluation, parties, not enough kids that are residents within the West Lafayette School District. My husband's been a lifelong community member of Tippecanoe County. He serves on the Lafayette Fire Department. I moved here for college. I've lived here since the mid-90s. I work in healthcare. We're both in jobs that provide a public service. We're involved in our community. We've sponsored the Scarlet and Gray Dinner for the West Lafayette Foundation, Education Foundation. And looking at the numbers from the Census Board, I don't think people's concern can be solely attributed to Airbnbs. According to the U.S. Census, there are just over 16,000 housing units within West Lafayette. 1,828 of those housing units were vacant. So to say that there is a housing shortage when we have over 1,800 housing units that are sitting vacant, one of which on Princess Drive sat vacant for pretty much the last year. The numbers don't quite support that. The Census Bureau also says 29.5% of West Lafayette is owner occupied. School enrollment data for people living in West Lafayette per the Census Bureau, 76.1% are undergraduate students, 13.8% are graduate students. So that's almost 90% of the population in West Lafayette. I can ask the board to consider that the number of students living in West Lafayette, because they don't do the census of kids living in the dorms, is impacting our school district more than Airbnbs. I reached out to Area Plan, and they said, the email was dated October 18th, that the following numbers that they had a 56 rentals approved for Airbnbs in West Lafayette, 25 in Lafayette, and 7 in the county. Since the ordinance was adopted in 2018, granted, they did mention a lot of those were grandfathered in and may have not formally gone through the process to be grandfathered in. Versus online, if you go to Airbnb.com, it shows 127 listings for West Lafayette. Even if all of those were legally operating and had gone through this process, that still wouldn't be 1% of the housing units available in West Lafayette. I know people have complained about the number of parties, the increase in crime, but again, if Airbnbs make up less than 1% of the housing units in West Lafayette, any spike in crime during Purdue events or events in the city can't be accounted for by less than 1% of a possible place to stay in West Lafayette. As far as home valuations, Princess Drive is only 2 blocks long. If you take out the multi-unit housing, which if you've driven on Princess Drive, they're not very attractive by any stretch. That leaves 14 single-family houses. Currently, 7 of those are rentals. So over half of 2 blocks is already rentals. And they're long-term renters. But if you average the price for the owner-occupied versus the long-term rentals have an average property value of more than $105,000 less. And we lived in that house for over 6 years. We could do long-term renters. Even with the West Lafayette rental inspections, those houses that are long-term renters, because they're usually college students, are maintained at the bare minimum. And that's why they have a lower property value. And we don't want to see the house that we lived in, brought 2 of our kids home in, to get to that state. Nor do we care to sell it, because like I said, we have family that we would like to be able to use it, but we don't want to see it go to some property management company that does not live here in town, doesn't have ties to the community. The property next door to us that sold for $190,000 in 2020 is now assessed value of $177,000. The property owners, we've never met them. They live out of state. I don't know that they've ever stepped foot on the property. So, unless you have anything else to add, we thank you for your time and we ask you for our consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the petition?
Hi, my name's Kevin Goslin. I live at 800 Princess Drive. I'm a neighbor of theirs. From our perspective, we have numerous long-term rentals, as they said, and compared to them, well, them compared to the Airbnb that's also on our street and a few in our area, the long-term rentals are garbage. They're aesthetically terrible. We've been inside a couple of them and they're just falling apart. They're poorly maintained. So from our perspective, the long-term rentals are very awful. We're very much for the Airbnb and whatever they are insistent on, the transient guest housing. I think it would add value to the neighborhood and especially our street. The apartments across their street are trashed. It's trash to say the least. There's garbage, literally garbage in the street and in the yards most days throughout the year. So there's definitely some long-term rentals that need some help. And with this property being a transient guest housing, I think it'll add value. It'll be well maintained, and since they live close by, it will be well taken care of. So we are very much for the transient guest housing here. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else speaking in favor of the petition? Hearing none, speaking in opposition.
Good evening. My name is Peter Goldsborough. I live at 156 Creighton Road in West Lafayette, 3 or 4 blocks away from this house on Princess. I ask that the board vote no on this special exception for yet another transient guest house in West Lafayette. The people who have these homes in this R1 zone, be it on Princess Drive or neighboring streets, never expected to live next door to a guest house where people were coming and going all times of the day and night, several times changing during the week. That's not what people who buy in an R1 zone are expecting. There are plenty of short-term housing options already available. Hotels, several new ones being built. There's already lots of Airbnbs that have been grandfathered in. So there's plenty of options for people who are looking for short-term housing. There's no need to add yet another one of these blights to our community. And I use the word blight because for people who live next door to these, that's what they're experiencing. So I don't see any special reasons for why this should be adopted. There are other options, long-term rental, if that's what they want to do. The reason that houses deteriorate is not to do with who's living there, it's with the owners who own those houses and let them decline. So I don't think saying that because there's housing that's declining, that that's a reason to let a short-term housing option become available. Rather than putting the interests of one individual family ahead of everyone else, I ask that you put the interests of everybody else who, as I'm sure you're going to hear, are opposed to this and consider their interests. I ask you to vote no.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition. Please come forward if you're going to speak in opposition.
Chad Spitznagel, Building Commissioner. I'm not going to reread the mayor's letter from past months, just because I think we've heard it, and I don't want to bring some new information. Our housing study that's referenced in that letter is in final draft form. I don't have it ready this month to share. Some highlights of that though are there's a 5,000 unit deficit in the city, and even if we built 400 or 500 new units each year, it would take up to 2030 to do that. Growing employment needs is lacking for single-family housing stock. The decline in non-student age population is declining. I'm hoping that the school corporation is also here tonight to explain, the true, issue of why it's affecting the health, safety, and general welfare of the city of West Lafayette. So, unlike last month, I do respect why you guys look at the variables. I think last month, the lady, she still left all of her stuff in the house. There's still extenuating circumstances as to, why you approved that last month. But I don't believe that there's a hardship this month as to why this inventory can't stay as a single-family house or a long-term rental. The city of West Lafayette does have a resolution at City Council next month to work on restricting transient guest houses in any R1 zone. So hopefully, we don't have to put the burden on you guys, and it's not in the jurisdiction to explain every month why the health, safety, and general welfare issue is a concern, a great concern of ours. So again, last month had some variables that fully see where you're going, but I don't believe the hardships this month as to why this house pertain to the same thing. So asking you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hello. I'm Jennifer Stein, and I live at 1721 Woodland Avenue in West Lafayette. I recently retired from a job in IT project management. And in that job, whenever I had to submit a proposal to sell some system work to a customer, I had to include a business case, stating why that customer would want to approve the work I was proposing. In other words, I needed to let them know how my work was going to benefit them, not what it was going to do for me. But that type of logic is exactly what I feel is missing in hearing this proposal for special exception. It's everything about how it's going to benefit the owners and what they need to the detriment of the neighbors, the West Lafayette and Purdue community, and the area as a whole. Over the past few months, we have talked about the actual proven negative impacts of short-term transient rentals. I live next door to one and near a bunch of others, until we're blue in the face, and I am just not in the mood to regurgitate all of those arguments again. My main point is there's no business case to approve the damage to the community so that one individual can benefit. It seems that being allowed to violate the existing zoning that the community expects to be protected by should be a high bar. The burden of proof should be on the party who's requesting the exception, not on those who want to enforce the existing long-time zoning. Any exception should provide some significant ongoing benefit to the community and/or maybe respond to some unexpected disaster that the owner is facing where they have no other options and they need maybe a short-term exception for some temporary relief. This request, however, is the result, and this is nothing personal, it's all about just the business case. This request is the result of a voluntary decision made by the owners to move, and they do have other options for the property that they left. For example, they could sell. It is pretty much a seller's market. They could long-term rent, and has been mentioned, the long-term rental is a function of the owners. I walk by several long-term rentals in our neighborhood every day, and those properties, the people that live there are students, they're just as quiet as the rest of the neighborhood. They're well-maintained, no problems. Or they could just keep it as an unpaid guest house for friends and family. So it's not an either-or, short-term or long-term rental. So anyway, that high bar to allow an exception has not been met here from what I can see. There's no business case. The benefit to one individual does not come close to the cost to the neighbors and the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Parker, 3103 Sullivan Street, West Lafayette, Indiana. I'm both a resident of West Lafayette and the Vice President of the West Lafayette City Council in District 5, and I'll be really short. As you all know, West Lafayette is a growing community with new businesses, new students, and new residents, and consequently new people who need a place to live. As you are also already aware, available housing stock in West Lafayette is in desperate need. Chad just mentioned that we need 5,000 additional units. Airbnbs will just exacerbate the problem of an already short housing stock. My personal opinion is that government should be in the business of trying to solve problems, and granting special exceptions for transient guest houses does the opposite, making a crisis housing situation even worse. So I ask you to oppose this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Good evening, everyone. David Kusick, residing at 807 Elmwood Drive, across the street from 810 Elmwood Drive, which is a transient guest house, and which 2 weekends ago we had to call the police and file an incident report for the noise and party that was going on at that establishment. Tonight, I would like to read into the record a petition from last October that has 343 signatures on it in opposition to this guest house on Princess Drive, 906 Princess Drive. We find the opposed special exception to deviate from existing rules, zoning rules, and allowing a transient guest house at that location in West Lafayette will materially and permanently injure the other property and uses of the same zoning district and vicinity, along with subverting the R1/R1B purposes of the Unified Zoning Ordinance. Our request to deny the special exception is supported by the community's expressed concerns regarding safety, traffic, noise, lighting, and the current and future uses of R1/R1B zone properties in the neighborhood. To prevent the erosion of our neighborhoods and to maintain their integrity as long-term housing for individuals and family, voting against this special exception is reasonable and justified. And I have 9 pages here with 343 signatures. Once again, I will reiterate comments I made at previous board meetings here. This is really simple. Transient guest houses takes away single-family homes from our school district, which is landlocked. There is no way for the West Lafayette School District to expand and have additional housing units available. If you want to see the best school district in the state and one of the best in the nation disappear and not be part of your community here in Greater West Lafayette, then go ahead and approve additional transient guest houses. But if you're proud of the school system, then vote against. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hi, my name is Yue Yin. I live on 755 Noble Court, West Lafayette. I have lived in West Lafayette for 15 years. And my statement is not only opposing this Airbnb request, but all the Airbnb requests in West Lafayette School District. I appreciate the owner's effort in providing a space for visitors to our city. I believe that the owner loves our community and our school district. I hope that the owner and the committee will consider the impact of Airbnb on our community and the district. First, from the neighborhood perspective, the lack of permanent residence will lead to a decrease in community engagement, stability, and coherence. And so many people have addressed the related issues. Second, from the economic perspective, numerous studies have shown that the increased number of Airbnb will lead to an increase in rents, an increase in house prices, and the damage to hotel industry. When so many local people have trouble finding a place to live daily, why do we need to save the space for temporary visitors who can easily find a hostel instead? Third, from the district perspective, it will worsen the housing shortage in West Lafayette School District. As many people are aware, housing supply in the West Lafayette School District are very, very limited, which drives the price up greatly. At one of these meetings, a Purdue faculty said that it was more difficult for him to get his job at Purdue than finding a house in the district for his family to live. West Lafayette School District received the third lowest funding per student from the state. The number of students is crucial for us to maintain and support our teachers and educational programs. The number of students actually dropped by 40 in last year. Apparently, Airbnb guests will not send their kids to our schools. That means it will further reduce the house supply in our district and further decrease the student enrollment. Therefore, West Lafayette School District actually issued a statement earlier this year to be against transit housing. In the statement, it says, the Board of School Trustees supports effort to ensure the families and the students of West Lafayette Community School Corporation continue to have access to neighborhoods that are safe, accessible, multi-generational, and walkable. First, there will be a domino effect. If one Airbnb case is approved in the residential area of West Lafayette School District, more than will follow because it's so close to Purdue and there are some business opportunities, people may be motivated to have more. But then the new applicants will ask why their requests were not approved if others have been approved. So once Airbnb starts in our residential area without intervention, it will further deteriorate the neighborhood and the district, make things really worse. And we don't want to see that. I believe the owners doesn't want to see that either. Finally, from the investor's perspective, it may make more sense for them to invest outside West Lafayette School District. As you may know, due to the housing shortage, the houses in West Lafayette School District are more expensive than their counterparts. And unfortunately, houses in the district also tend to be older and need more maintenance. In addition, West Lafayette School District just passed the referendum last year. It means all the houses, the taxable assessment, if your house's taxable assessment value is $300,000, then you will have to pay more than $1,000 tax every year, which make your investment even less profitable. A realtor friend told me. 30 seconds, please, ma'am. Okay, realtor friend, thanks. Told me that the houses in our district is so desirable that typically any house on the market will attract 5 to 9 offers on the first day, and people have to add 30,000 even more to bid for the house. So if you don't need to live in your property, why don't you sell it and invest elsewhere? With all the reasons, please don't convert your house to Airbnb. Committee, please don't vote yes to this request. If you don't need your house, please sell it. Thanks.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
Hi, my name is Iris O'Donnell Belisario, and I live at 912 Lindbergh Road, basically right on the other side of that rental unit that they're talking about. I'm also a city councilor at large in West Lafayette, and I'm going to do my best to avoid repeating anything that's previously been shared, but I share all of those sentiments that have been shared on behalf of the city. So the housing crisis itself is incredibly difficult for young individuals to move into the city of West Lafayette, and I'd like to share a little bit about my experience with that. I started looking for a house when I was 21 because I knew it would take multiple years for me to be able to move into the city. I was very fortunate, but it took over 12 offers for me to get an offer accepted. I wanted to spend basically the rest of my life, run for city council, and commit myself to the community, but it was an incredibly difficult barrier. And I think that's just one of the examples of the rising home prices and the lack of affordability for families in the city of West Lafayette that really needs to be taken into consideration with this decision. I think we also are kind of potentially adding some level of safety hazard to our students that is right along the elementary school. I already have people walking through my backyard who live on Princess Drive who are in those rentals. I've had to fence in my entire yard, and it is, I regularly call the police, which is not fun. And so I would hate to have that kind of continue if we know that there are issues in that area specifically of the city. Can we try to maintain what we do have there and maintain the small bit of community and neighborhood that we still have in that area? So I would encourage you to please consider voting against the exception. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
My name is Richard Hogan. I live at 825 Robinson Street in West Lafayette. Yeah, I shaved. Sorry. I can't believe we're still here. I can't believe we're still here talking about special exceptions after it's become clear that the voters and the city want you to tap the brakes. I mean, how much more can they say? They want you to stop the inundation of residential neighborhoods with transient rentals, period. As a professor emeritus of sociology, I thought maybe, and actually I've published on land use politics, I know something about this, I thought maybe I could clarify the nature of this problem for you. Let me give it a shot. The APC is using the state legislature to facilitate the manipulation of local housing prices. The people that are manipulating the local housing prices are the finance, insurance, and real estate corporations, what the census calls FIRE. And they profit from their control of the rise and fall of housing prices in a market that is anything but free. What they're doing is actually reverse redlining. Now, unlike traditional redlining, which denied housing and mortgages to people of color, reverse redlining welcomes these people to take on more debt than they can ever repay, using balloon mortgages, for example. When the bubble bursts, the banks foreclose, housing prices drop, and the corporate investors start all over again. That's how they control this market, investment, disinvestment. Now, students in this world here, students are the surrogates for people of color in this game. And we've heard student rentals are awful. Transient rentals are better. To the extent that the APC and the board accept this argument, they're closing the housing market to people who actually work for a living and retirees, and people who need to buy food as well as shelter. Families can no longer afford to buy single-family dwellings in neighborhoods within walking distance of school and work. The wealthy parents of Purdue students buy kiddie condos, or the speculators buy deteriorating student housing for sale as Airbnb. slumlord student rentals facilitate the physical deterioration of these houses. We all know that. Transient rentals, as we know, artificially inflate the price, right? So since corporations control the fire industries, this is a heartless, profit-making enterprise that exploits loopholes in the law, and Chad, I'm sorry, but the lack of law enforcement as well. And these combine to ensure that the neighborhoods deteriorate under the carefully orchestrated investment and disinvestment strategy, the agreements between the major corporate actors in the fire industrial sector. Now, not everybody is a big bad capitalist, right? Sometimes hapless homeowners, like the lady who got the exception in February, stumble into the transient rental market as it's a strategy for keeping a family home where nobody in the family actually wants to live there. The problem is they're swimming with sharks. We should expect a change in management, certainly in the last one, if not ownership there. I mean, it's virtual, it's a virtual certainty that there's going to be a new exception, a new corporate owner or manager, because that's the way the system works. When home owning is big business, only big business will own homes. We might as well abolish zoning and simply let the speculators build whatever, wherever they want. We've already abandoned the idea of big picture planning. Why are we still going through the motions? Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in opposition.
I'm so tired, I don't know whether I can do it. All right. The name is Cheryl Kirkpatrick. I live at 801 Carrollton Boulevard, West Lafayette 47906. I hope you vote no. I have been up here, and I have said since July 27th when I found out what in the heck was going on in my neighborhood, no, no, and more no. Now, I have two reasons why I want to say this. Number one, this is a perfect house. If you can have 8 people renting in there, you can have a mother and a father with 1 to 6 children. Yeah, and they can walk to school. And they can also walk to the high school. And the father can even walk to Purdue. My father did. Walked all the way to Purdue and through the campus to the Hort building, which is on the opposite side. So anybody in physical health can do that. That's the first one. It is basically downright criminal that you would let this house not go to a single family when we have a shortage. And today I just read, it was either in Banger's column yesterday or today, that something is coming to Purdue and it'll probably provide for maybe 30 jobs. Oh, well, big deal. Well, okay, where are those people going to live? Then they talk about something else, which if we get rid of LEAP, maybe we can get it in Tippecanoe County and in West Lafayette and Greater Lafayette, which they're talking about with the president, Chiang. And they said that would be maybe 800 to 1,000 jobs. Where in the heck would these people live? Where are you going to put them? I just don't understand. If we have a shortage of houses, why do you want to let them be Airbnbs? And finally, for any of you who went to the city council meeting, which was what, last week or 2 weeks ago? They begged us and said, Purdue doesn't have enough housing for their students because they have done the same damn thing they've been doing since 1980, and that is letting more students come to our school than they have housing for. And then they turn around and say, oops, what are we going to do? West Lafayette, it's your problem. It's not Purdue's problem. You need to find housing for them. Well, how the heck did she think all those houses got to be rentals? Because this has been going on for decades. And I know that because I grew up on University Street, and my mother We had roomers. We didn't have renters. We had roomers. And who wouldn't want to live across from the Armory if you were going to Purdue and walk right onto the campus? And they were well behaved. Of course, we all lived there. And I liked the guys and used to eat bologna sandwiches with them. But anyway, so I know about roomers. And even when we moved up to Bexley, we still had roomers. So take these 4 bedrooms and open them up to the students, or have some family member or somebody else be the one that takes 1 bedroom and rents out the other 3 to keep their eyes on it and see that there's no destruction. And you can help with the overpopulation of the students who don't have a place to live at Purdue.
Thank you. If you could sign in, please.
Sorry.
Speaking in opposition. Anyone else wanting to speak in opposition? If not, Cordes, you have a rebuttal.
To address some of the opposition, I agree with Cheryl. Purdue's admitted more students than it could house. The first time we petitioned and got continued here, if she had listened that night, that was a point I brought up more than once. And it's, again, when I come with numbers tonight, it's almost 90% undergrad and grad students living in West Lafayette, according to the Census Bureau. And the majority of people that got up and opposed this, they came with emotions. Chad had some numbers, and Dr. Yen had some numbers. Chad's numbers aren't published yet. Our numbers came from the Census Bureau. If we really need to have a 5,000 unit deficit, it's kind of hard to see when the house on Garden and Princess has sat vacant for over a year because nobody wanted to rent it. Granted, it's not a pretty house, but sometimes if you need a place to live, it's not always pretty. The idea of us renting it to a family, we're not opposed to that. But isn't it kind of a form of discrimination if we tell students or singles that they can't live there because we need to fill all 4 bedrooms? And even if my older son chooses to live there during college in a year or 2, because of West Lafayette ordinances, he technically can't rent out the other 3 bedrooms unless at least one other person's related to him, because then we'd break the ordinance of no more than 3 unrelated people living in a dwelling. Of all the people that came up and spoke in opposition, only 2 of them live in close proximity to us. The rest of them, they walk around with the Neighborhoods Need Neighbors t-shirts. They've never tried to be our neighbors in the years that we lived there. I worked in the same department as one of them for over 6 years, but I wasn't another professor. I'm not important enough to remember. When you call 911, we're the people you want to see. But other than that, you guys have tried to make us out to be greedy corporations, not caring about this community, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. And we came here with data, not emotions, because we get one of the concerns is if this exemption is approved, the way the ordinance is written currently, if we sell the house tomorrow, it goes with the house. And the next owners may not care about the community. They may not live close by. I would say the county and the zoning board, that law could be changed. It's not like granting a new structure that's going to be permanent. This is one of those exceptions. If approved, the law could be changed so it's each new owner, if they wanted it, would have to petition and show that they were going to do things like have noise monitors, have in the rental agreements, no parties. We live close enough by. If there is an issue, we can drive over and deal with it ourselves. We don't live out of state. Even if we're on a family vacation, we have other family in town that could go over and address any issues that arose.
Yeah. The reality is, I can't disagree with them on the housing shortage, but this is not a problem we created, and it's been going on for a long time. I understand that. If we were to put that house on the market tomorrow, in the condition it is in, majority of people that would be looking for that kind of a house wouldn't even be able to afford it. So we would basically be selling to an investor who's going to turn it into a long-term rental anyways.
And not care.
And most likely, it's going to be an investor from California, New York, somewhere not even local. So for us to hold on to the property holds more value to the community than us just turning it over to some random investor from wherever. Would not be local. So, but I can't disagree with the fact that there is a shortage, but we are trying to keep the neighborhood looking nice to help with the other people's property values.
And we still keep our kids in West Lafayette School, even though we're now considered transfer students.
Yes.
So I have to go through the application, pay the tuition, even though we still pay property taxes on this property. So by doing a rental with it and moving to help family, which again is still part of this community, we weren't doing it with the intent to harm the schools. That's part of why we wanted to keep it so that it could be maintained. It could, like I said, we're not opposed to renting to families. We just want the flexibility in between leases
To have that
have
option.
some short-term rentals. And again, there's a huge healthcare need for certain specialists. A lot of times we can't get someone to move here because they want to live in a bigger city, but they're willing to come here a week, a month, or 2 weeks a month as locums.
Just a point of order, this is a rebuttal, and so if it wasn't brought up by
Okay.
the people who were against it, it's really not appropriate to bring it up now and to
Sorry.
repeat it from your original presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Any questions or comments from the board? If not, we have a ballot.
Five ballots cast, 2 yes, 3 no.
It's an inconclusive vote, so we will hear it again next month. And hopefully we'll have more members present. And we'll go here, and I'll go ahead and take our next case, please.
I move to hear on and vote on BZA 2144, Charles and Mary Barnett, petitioners and owners are requesting a variance to reduce the rear setback to an 8-foot from a minimum 10-foot to accommodate an existing shed and allow for a proposed expansion in a AW zone. The 1.026 acre tract zoned AW is located at 5533 State Road 25 West, or South, in West Point, Indiana.
Second.
Motion and a second. We'll hear from staff, please. Amanda?
Thank you. The land in question, as you can see from this image, is zoned AW, along with most of the other land in the area. The I-3 across the street was rezoned in 2019 for a salvage yard. Floodplain zoning from Flint Creek is further to the east of this property. This property is currently improved with a single-family dwelling and an existing 12 by 10-foot garden shed. Other properties in this area are similarly improved on this stretch of State Road 25, which is about 1 mile south of West Point. The site plan and the garden shed here, existing, it was placed here on the property before the petitioner bought it. It was placed 8 feet from the property line instead of the required 10 feet. We're not sure how or why they did that. But at this point, the petitioner wants to expand on that condition, which is the reason for this variance request. The side of the garden here, you can see a slight dip in, or kind of more of a major dip in the yard here. There is a bit of a drainage swale that goes through the back corner of the yard. And that's a picture looking towards the road from the back of the property. So in addition to that drainage swale, the petitioner's property also has a geothermal loop buried underground between the house and the shed. The leach field for the septic system is also located between the dwelling and the garden shed. So while these improvements might create a practical difficulty in building elsewhere on the property, staff was not able to find an ordinance-defined hardship. This property is common to other properties in the same zoning district, but strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance would not result in an unusual or unnecessary hardship as defined in the zoning ordinance. This hardship is self-imposed because the petitioner wishes to expand on the garden shed. Minimum relief would be to keep the property as it currently stands. So we are recommending denial in this case, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Petitioner, his or her representative.
My name is Charles Barnett, property owner at 5533 State Road 25 South. We bought the property in 2015 when we retired and moved to the area to be closer to our daughter and her family. Shed was existing, and in January or so, I decided I wanted to look at a project to increase my yard tool, garden tool storage, and transfer some of the existing garden shed into a workshop. It has electric and the like, so it'd be favorable to do maintenance of garden tools and the like. So once I discovered that the 8-foot setback was in violation, it's like, okay, what do I do? So I started the process of working with APC on filing the variance request. They were very helpful, and I've talked to my neighbors, and no one in the neighborhood, my immediate neighbors, the gentleman in the back, both side neighbors, have any issues with the proposal. So I respectfully request approval of this variance request.
Good, thank
Any
you.
questions?
We may have some for you in a bit. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Anyone in opposition? Questions, comments from the board? So it's my understanding from looking at this that on the map, the S is the shed, the PS is the proposed addition. Just to make sure I've got that right.
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And G is the garden, which actually overlays on the septic field.
You're right.
And it would appear from the...
If you're going to speak, come up to the mic, please.
It would appear from the ground imprints. I have a sketch from, the house was remodeled and added onto in 2001, 2002. A new septic system and field lines were installed. And from the sketch and from the views that you can see of overhead shots, that the field lines run up tight to the garden shed. So, in my opinion, that's why the garden shed was pushed back closer to the rear property line. That's my opinion.
Is the garden shed movable, or is it on a foundation?
It is not on a foundation. There is electrical run to it. The issue, and if you look at some of the topography, while it's gently sloping, there's no easy way, one, to move it. The heavy equipment would have to be on the leach field, so that's not good. If I would try to move it to the north or opposite of that, my electrical would be required to be replaced all the way to the house, which would be expensive.
And there are no easements in the back of the
Not that I'm
property?
aware of.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? We have a ballot. Oh, I guess we do have two ballots.
No, the two for the next one.
Shouldn't be.
Oh,
2144 at the top.
2144, yeah, the next
one's got.
the next one's got two, it's labeled number 2 and number 3, which is because the first one was withdrawn, yeah. So it's,
This one.
yeah.
Gotta keep you guys on your toes.
Exactly.
5 ballots cast, 5 in favor.
Variance is approved,
Thank you.
and we'll hear our final case.
I move to hear and vote on PZA-2147 52T LLC. Petitioner and owner, represented by Chris Shellman of Kuwine Law, is requesting the following variances for a proposed semi-trailer storage site in an I3 zone to allow a buffer yard using the existing vegetation for the required 15-foot setback, or 15-foot buffer yard to the east in lieu of the new planting, and to reduce the minimum vegetative coverage of the required 20% of the 11.5%. The 10-acre tract is located on the south side of East Old 350 South, east of its intersection, Country Road, south 500 East, in the Sheffield District. Thank you for turning the mic up.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and we'll hear from staff, please.
Evening, everybody. Nathan McBurnett, APC staff. We have an I3 zone property here between, just south of East Old 350 South, between Newcastle Road and US 52 down further to the south. This is on the eastern, kind of the easternmost edge of an industrial corridor that kind of sits in between those two roads. This property currently sits unimproved. It's used for cropland. Surrounding properties are zoned, as you can see, A or I3. The adjacent property to the west, owned by the petitioner, is currently used as a gravel and paving business. All other adjacent properties are used agriculturally. This area has seen a lot of activity in terms of BZA cases and rezones, many of which have been related to the trucking industry, which is what this case relates to. Just to the northeast, a property was recently rezoned to an I3 for a truck terminal. About a half mile down due south, there were two variances that were approved by this board last year for a similar variance, or one of the variance request, the original number one variance for the surface lot. So a lot of activity from the trucking industry in this area. Let's see what else. The site is not currently served by public utilities. The petitioner has said that public utilities will not be required. There will be, as you can see on the site plan, I know it's kind of hard to see, up in the top right-hand corner, there'll be a gatehouse, which is not a permanent structure. It'll be like an office trailer. It won't require any utilities. There won't be a bathroom or anything like that. The bathroom will actually, all utilities like that will be located due west of the property in this facility right here, which is owned by the petitioner. So anybody using the site would use the facilities in this structure. The original the first variance was withdrawn because the proposed surface material met the tests for what's required by our ordinance. That test requires something that is dust-free, durable, and cohesive. And the proposed surface material, which is the recycled asphalt, does meet that requirement according to the administrative officer for the county. The types, this property would require a type C buffer yard, which would be 30 total feet, only 15 of which the property owner or the petitioner would be required to have. On the site plan, it shows 363 striped storage stalls for trailers. It's not a parking lot, it's a storage facility. Those 300, the actual product would not have those stripes. That's just for a point of reference. The lot is actually just it's not going to have the lines because they want to be able to provide as many trailers as possible that can fit on this lot. And with that, the terms of the zoning ordinance as are strictly applied, the situation is common to other properties in the same zoning district. The property is surrounded by other similar properties, similar shapes, and similar uses. And strict application of the term of the zoning ordinance will not result in an unusual or necessary hardship as defined in the zoning ordinance. We have an image here. So this is the existing tree line, much of which is dense, mature trees. But as you can see further to the left, there's an opening there. that provides no buffer yard between the two properties. So while keeping the matured trees would be preserving an ecological asset to the property, that does not preclude the petitioner from providing additional green space in that area where there's no existing buffer yard. Additionally, the hardship involved is self-imposed or solely based on a perceived reduction of or restriction on economic gain. There is nothing impeding the petitioner from, as I said, providing the necessary buffer yard with the trees and green space. Petitioner's desire to preserve the existing line of mature trees would preserve an ecological asset, but the proposed number of storage stalls is economically motivated and is not facilitated by the current site. And with that, staff recommends denial on both variances.
Thank you, Nathan. Petitioner, his or her representative.
Thank you. Good evening. Chris Shellman of Gutwein Law, 250 Main Street, here on behalf of 52T LLC. Want to thank Nathan, Amanda, staff. Certainly been helpful in this process and kind of getting down and digging down with Mike and figuring out exactly how everybody wanted to work to get this project together. Ultimately, what the request here is, as Nathan mentioned, the area doesn't have utilities on site yet. The city is looking at extending utilities to the northeast in the next couple of years, which will open up the site for further industrial development, more intense industrial development. So this is sort of a proposed stopgap interim use while the utilities catch up on the site. One of the principals and owners, Brad Pettigo, has the paving and asphalt company immediately to the west. And that's kind of one of the unique new proposals here is that these sites, they don't have the same ownership, there's common parties, so they're being developed separately, but they're practically being developed as one together unit. In fact, the detention facility, storage and stormwater detention facilities located on that site are being used for this site as well. So we're viewing it, from a development standpoint as one overall project between the T-shaped lot that came before this board, I think also for a buffer yard variance a couple years ago that you see just right there to the west. And we'll be using that site for our storm detention, and that site also has additional green space and those types of things. The water on this site, where it's the recycled asphalt will shed the water to the west. All of the existing green space sheds to the east. So by covering and paving this area, to the extent that term is appropriate, I'm not going to say it's paved because it's recycled asphalt that's compressed for clarification, but Mike's comfortable with that. All of that allows us to get the water from the east side of the property west into the detention facility. With respect to the buffer yard, what I think is unique here in working with Mike is that the key term that he feels that he can't say that the buffer yard meets the requirements on its own. He has some discretion in saying, hey, the existing vegetation is sufficient, is the use of the term evergreen trees in the ordinance language. And he can say that the existing tree line is dense, that there is vegetation there, but that it's not evergreen. And so that's the origin of the unique wording that came from Mike. What he wanted to be able to say is if the neighbor came, he couldn't say that, I agree that there's equivalent of evergreen vegetation there because there isn't. And talking with staff, petitioner's certainly willing to plant some evergreen trees in those spaces, and we have no problem committing to do that. But what we don't want to do is plant evergreen trees beside larger trees that are already there covering, or cut down vegetation to plant new evergreen trees. So those are the unique characteristics of this proposal. We'd be happy to answer any question. I have Nigel from Kimley Horn, who's much better at engineering and all of those important things, but respectfully request approval on these two requests.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? In opposition? Comments or questions? And it's my understanding, Chris, that these are under different property ownerships?
They are. Some
And-
common parties, but not the
There's
same.
some, okay, and are there agreements or easements for like drainage and that then?
Yes, there will be.
There will be? And, I mean, you said that you're willing to possibly entertain a commitment to try and fill in some of those empty spots in the buffer?
Yes. We'll plant evergreens there and the 2 every 10 feet on the half type C. That's not an issue.
And I would assume that we would need a motion.
Yeah, and if you could be
For
very
that.
specific, and you're probably in the best position, or the engineer, to specify what you are committing to in terms of what area you could indicate on a written map that could be put into the evidence, however you think would be best documented, Chris.
And I certainly agree that we don't want to cut down the existing or the existing trees in order to plant a new buffer yard, but if we can fill in the gaps where there's,
Yes,
that area right there.
the hand.
We have it going, just highlight it and put it in the rev.
Will do. Do you have that picture? Probably not printed out, but,
No, I don't think we do.
that. How about, that's a great one, too.
That's a good picture there, yeah. That opening.
So, yes, that'd be
Yeah.
showing that gap, and we can definitely do that.
That would be acceptable to me. And I'm assuming we would need a motion for that to require
I think a condition's sufficient. David, do you agree? And all I would ask for you to be descriptive on the record as to what you're committing to.
Sure.
Approximately this many feet, whatever.
Great. Yes, so installing the type C buffer yard with evergreen trees, the half measure, because the other site isn't developed, in the visual gap that exists in these pictures provided by staff, which will be supplemented by Nigel and Kimley Horn's expert engineering and surveying work. But I'm guessing, based on the size of these trees, is somewhere between 300 and 100 feet along the 10-acre site, which the 10-acre is. So that is approximately, I don't know, is it a third of the way to the south on the site, on the eastern?
Yeah.
This is why they shouldn't let lawyers do legal descriptions.
I think that's sufficient if staff agrees. You'll know what you're seeing when they submit it, and you'll say, yep, that's what
That's
was
what it
committed
is.
to.
And I'm assuming we need, I would like, if someone could make a motion that we require an amended site plan showing the filling of the gap of the buffer yard per the description that Chris,
I will make the motion that we allow the amended site plan to be added as a supplement.
do you have a second?
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any comments or questions on that?
I have one.
Go ahead.
What is the existing use for the eastern property? Is it just the farming ground?
Yes, as far as I know. I don't know if they have any other plans, but it's just farm ground.
It's zoned ag.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Hearing no other questions or comments, all in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries, so you should receive an amended site plan from Chris.
You will.
And appreciate you filling that in.
No worries.
And any other comments or questions? If not, we actually have two ballots. labeled number 2, which is the buffer yard, and number 3, which is the vegetative coverage.
You can do them both at once.
We can do them both at once, correct?
All right, for variance number 2, there are 5 casts and all 5 are yes. Variance number 3, 5 ballots cast and all 5 are yes.
Both variances have been granted. Unless any member has an objection, the chair will order the findings of each member casting a vote for the majority decision of the board to be the collective findings of the board in support of the decision of the board. Hearing none, it is so ordered. Administrative matters.
Each spring, Professor Gary Steinhardt from Purdue brings his graduate agronomy class to an APC and a BZA meeting. That'll be next month. We precede that with a presentation about kind of a land use primer, and then we talk about how these meetings operate, and so he brings them and lets them see it in person. So they ask that if anybody is available just to speak, linger a little bit after the meeting and talk with the students, answer questions, that would be helpful. So that'll be next month.
Thank you. And again, we'd like to thank Brad for his first meeting. And David, I would like to thank you. I understand that you are leaving us for Bloomington. So best of luck to you.
You didn't need to say that out loud, but yes. Thank you.
And it's been a pleasure working with you for the past 3 years.
Thanks, David.
I'll take the last motion, please.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.